My name is Ebony Canyon. Some people know me as Survival Story as far as my social media handles. I have quite a story to tell. At the age of 9, I was molested by a close family member. At the age of 14, I was raped by a family friend. Then at the age of 23, I became a widow of, at that time, 3 children. At the age of 25, 26, I entered into a domestic violence relationship. And at the age of 34, I was actually struck by a car. I was hit by a female who actually hit me on purpose and left me for dead. It was actually by 2 different people. The molestation was by a close family member, and the rape was by a family friend. I never told anybody. I never told. I was afraid. My molester always told me, if you tell, they're not going to believe you. They're going to blame it on you. And I wish I had told, because I told my mother at the age of 23. And when I told my mother, my sister was actually there, and she told me she had been molested by the same person. So I would definitely say tell. You know, it caused me to be promiscuous throughout my life, my teenage years. I was very promiscuous. You know, it caused me to act out. I always say that when you go through certain things, it's either going to take you up or take you down. There's usually no in between. I stepped into a situation, a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, I stepped into the situation. I thought he was going to make things better, because usually in domestic violence relationship, at the beginning, everything's fine. And that's how it was. And then the real him began to come out slowly but surely. I remember I had a black eye probably once a month, and I would begin to cake my face up with makeup and tell my kids different stories and tell my family different stories, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
What happened?
There was a terrible, it was the last beating, terrible beating. He actually broke into my home, and I woke up and he was standing over me. My children were there, and he just began, you know, to hit me, and it was a terrible situation, throwing me in the shower, beating me with a shower rod. And he actually moved out of town, because I finally told my family, you know, after this. And of course, I have men in my family. They were upset. So he actually moved out of town, and it took him to get away from me in order for us to break up. To this day, I can't even say that I wouldn't have went back then. But what I know now, I wouldn't have went back. But back then, I believe that I just may have went back just for the comfort zone. Just for the comfort zone. He was actually a neighborhood friend, one of many that I ended up marrying. You know, he saw the best in me and the good in me, and he brought it out of me. He was in the passenger side, and his friend hit a pole, and he died instantly. So my children actually watched me in a coma, knowing that their father had just passed, you know, from a car situation. So yeah, it was pretty hard on my children. So we were out having, you know, a good time celebrating my birthday. I was actually with my sister and 2 of my cousins. And we got back to her house maybe about 2:30 in the morning. And when we got there was a car in the driveway. We weren't expecting anybody, you know, so we blew the horn, you know, asking to get out of the driveway. We found out later that there was actually 5 females in this car. But they refused to get out of the driveway, so my grandmother just so happens to stay a couple of doors down where my sister was living. So we ended up having to park down the street. But we got down to the car, and my sister, you know, of course she's upset. It's 2:30 in the morning, somebody's in your driveway, won't leave you. You know, you're upset. So she had some words with the females or whatever. And they finally got out of the driveway, but they didn't leave. They backed directly across the street into another driveway. And once the females got out of the car, my sister noticed that she knew one of the females. And one of the females was somebody who she had gotten into it previously with. So I immediately knew, you know, this is trouble. And the altercation broke out, and my nephew ended up coming out of the house and breaking the altercation up. Now, we're thinking they're leaving because they go back to their car. We're across the street. I'm kind of on the curb across the street, directly across the street from the car. And they get in their car, hear the car start up, headlights come on. You know, we're thinking they're leaving. They had the option of either going right or left, and they came directly towards me, hitting me, and turning and dragging me up the street with my body folded up under the car as my family chased the car. And, you know, because the car was barely going because my body was stopping it. and my nephew, of course they told me by this point, you know, what happened. I don't know, I was up under the car. But they told me that, you know, they were banging on the car, and once they turned the corner, my body was released from under the car, and the girls kept going. And I was in the hospital for 4 months, in a coma for 2 months. Wasn't expected to live. Just to give you an idea of the injuries and how far I've come, when I first woke up out of the coma, I couldn't feel from my neck down. I suffered a dislocated spine, broken pelvis, collapsed lung, 7 broken ribs. My entire back was scraped off due to the car dragging me. The left side of my face was ripped up, needed to be sewn back on. My tongue was nearly severed. But I wasn't expected to live, and I wasn't expected to walk, but right now I'm walking with the aid of a cane and braces. Well, they actually ended up charging only the driver, and they charged her with aggravated vehicular assault, and she only got 5 years probation. Of course, you know, when I heard the verdict, I was crying, and, you know, I just couldn't believe it, you know, that I have to die in order for her to go to jail is what I kind of felt. But my oldest son, because at the time I was still in a wheelchair, and he leaned down at me, he said, "Mom, don't we know God?" And once he told me that, I never cried about it again. I took all that anger and bitterness and I used it to fight to recover. And that's why I'm at where I'm at now, walking. Well, people's reaction to my story is usually amazement. They're usually amazed. You know, they're usually kind of like, you know, you're giving me so much inspiration. I'm never going to give up. I look at people with scars differently. I find that all the time people are like, I see scars in a total different light, and I'm glad that, you know, you're bringing people who don't have a voice, you're giving a voice for those people. You know, people with handicaps and deformities or burns or whatever the situation may be. People are starting to tell me, you know, I look at things totally different. I don't complain anymore. You know, they're kind of like, if you got through that, then I know I can get through what I'm going through. Sometimes people need an actual visual of God's work, you know, and I felt as if I show this and show people where you can come if you just believe, then they'll know that there's a God. My father always told me, "Ebony, there has to be more to you than your outside." He always told me that, and now I'm living it and I know it. Not to say that I'm not beautiful, because I still am now. I'm a different kind of beauty, but I'm beautiful, you know. But I had to learn to embrace my inside. I had to know this is just a shell. This is a shell. Once the shell is gone and your insides begin to show, are you really still beautiful? What if everybody was blind? Would you still be beautiful to people, you know? So I had to show it. I had to show it. So I want people to know that, you know, beauty is what you make it. Beauty does not define you. You define beauty. After everything I've been through, there's got to be a God. There's got to be a God. Somebody's helping me through this. I am not strong enough myself to make it through this. So I knew that He's there. I always knew that He's always there with me. Mentally, I've grown. I've grown, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I wouldn't change it. I found purpose. I was lost then. I know why I'm here now. I know exactly why I'm here. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts about it now. And as time went past and started going on, I realized that everything that I had been through was to help somebody else get through what they were going through. You can purchase my book, Left for Dead, at www.thesurvivorstory.org. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at survival_story. And you can also follow me on Facebook at Survival Story. My name is Ebony Canyon, and I could be bitter, but I'm better.